Hey Internet, Waiya Paints here for Waiya Print and Paint. This is going to be my step-by-step guide to painting Tenjin from Black Forest Games. Before we started, I primed the model with Rust-Oleum Black. I used gloss for the areas that had any armor pieces to save me some time, and flat for the base and large fabric sections. Starting with the base, I used a wide flat brush to put down a base of Vallejo Cold Gray. Nothing too fancy here, just get the paint on the rock. I kept the brush flat on the surface to avoid it getting any color in the cracks, but other than that, there was no special attention made. I followed this up with a very wet dry brush of Vallejo Stonewall Gray while it was still drying to blend them in a bit. Once they were dry, I came back in with a controlled wash of Citadel Nuln Oil. I didn't want to get this everywhere, so I just focused the wash on all the major cracks and any divots that I wanted to reinforce with some shadows. After a few minutes, I came back in with a heavy dry brush of our cold gray again to blend and soften those transitions of the wash. And then I finished it up with a light dry brush of Stonewall Gray just around the edges and a few highlight spots. With that out of the way, the base is now done. We could add moss or foliage or even some snow to really set the scene, but I'll decide on that later. Let's move on to the pants. I wanted an earthy tone to not distract from the rest of the model, so I put down a base of Vallejo Gunship Green with my biggest brush just to save time. Since the pants were a really nice fabric texture, I gave it a quick all-over wash with Nuln Oil. I let the wash pool a bit in the folds, just to bump up the contrast. Once done, I came back with a dry brush of Gunship Green, just to focus on those large folds to better establish the shadows the wash gave me. Next, I did a dry brush of Vallejo Goblin Green to give me a nice separation of those main folds. To really push the highlights, I took it one step further and started hitting the high parts of our folds with Vallejo Escorpina Green. Even though I picked a muted earth tone for the pants, I did want to have some details for those looking close, so I went in with the Scorpina Green and picked out some random stitches in the pattern to get a bit of that tattered look. Let's take a look at how the pants look posed with the base. I like it. Next up, I want to tackle Tenjin's skin. Since he's a demon, we can pick pretty much whatever color we want, and in this case, I wanted him to have a purple-blue hue, so I laid down a base of P3's Bad Peruse. Now this is the first part that care is needed, as I want to avoid getting any paint on the armored areas, because I want them to be black lacquer armor, so if I keep them clean, I won't have to paint them later. But this means I have to take extra care at this step and any other step that's around the armor. Once all of the skin area had full coverage, I wanted a subtle highlight, so I mixed in 50-50 of Bad Brews with Vallejo Alien Purple. I built up highlights on the major muscle groups and any key areas. The face was given some basic highlights, but I'll save the rest for later when I do fine details and touch-ups. Next, I wanted to knock out his sandals. For this, I used P3's Bootstrap Brown, followed by, you guessed it, a Nolan Oil wash. Next, it's time for some metallics. In this case, I used Vallejo Liquid Silver on the chainmail in his hands and on the scale armor that Tenjin has on his shoulders. Once again, this was shaded with a Nolan Oil wash. The next is most tedious part of this whole paint session, the ropes. There are ropes holding all of Tenjin's armor pieces, and then there's extra rope just for decoration. I really like the idea of a deep red rope set against a high gloss black lacquer armor. So I chose Vallejo Scarlet Red and very painstakingly painted every rope on this model. I wanted these leg armor plates to be a burnished red leather that matched the rope, so I might as well use the same red to save time. After giving them a quick wash with Vallejo Reichland Flesh and a dry brush of scarlet red focused towards the center, our reds were now done. And that brings us to the end of this video. Be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss part 2, where we'll finish up our metallics and do final details and touch-ups. As always, keep printing, keep painting, and I'll see you next time.